In Figma, we're used to using frames and groups to say, hey, these layers are related to one another and should be treated as a single unit. Well, in HTML, we can do the exact same thing by nesting elements inside of other elements. Let's take a look here. So we have quick menu here. And as you can see, we've got some connected information. We've got the navigation up top. We've got this whole section in the middle. We've got the image down at the bottom. And what we can do in Figma is use a frame, use auto layout here. We can have some more groups. And we use these things to say these elements or these layers are connected to one another, and we can apply some specific styling and things like that to them. But really, it's a useful grouping mechanism for us. So in HTML, we can do the exact same thing. So why don't we come over here to our code, and we'll open up our browser, and we can take a look at our code over here. Now, previously, we had added all of this document structure, and when we were doing that, inside of our HTML, we added two other elements, and then inside of our head, we added another element. Inside of our body, we added another element. And if we come over here to our editor, notice these little toggles here? Just like our layer list over in Figma, we are nesting elements inside of other elements. And so this idea, this like drill down of information, is what we refer to as nesting. So with certain types of HTML elements, they're not necessarily for describing specific content. They're more like organizational wrappers for the information on the page. So when it comes to this H1 here, what would be a really good wrapper for it? Maybe it's the main content of the page, or maybe it's more like the header of the page. So I wonder if there is a header element that we could wrap this H1 in to give it some more semantic meaning. Well, we can do that. We can go ahead and we'll add our header element, and this is fingers on keyboards here, follow along. We'll say header, and then it will auto close for us. And if we open this up, we can go ahead and grab our H1 here. So I'm just going to copy all of this, Command X, Command V, and we'll just rework the spacing, and there we go. So now we've put our H1 inside of a header. We've nested it inside of the header. And what this allows us to do is if we refresh the page, it doesn't visually change anything, at least not just yet, but it does provide more semantic information when the browser interprets that code. So now it's not just the H1, it's the H1 inside of the header. So this is this part of the page. What other wrappers are there? What other kind of elements can we use? Well, there's also a main element, and this is for the main content of the page. So if you think of like a 5-paragraph essay, the header is like your intro, that first paragraph. We have the main, which is the 3 paragraphs in the middle. And then what's going to be at the bottom? Well, it's going to be the footer. So we have a footer element as well. So we've got our 5-paragraph essay. We've got our intro, we've got our main content for the essay, and then we have our conclusion, we have our footer here as well. So again, these are enabling us to encapsulate and provide more information to our page here. What else can we do? Let's look inside of main. Maybe we have more than 3 paragraphs. Maybe it's a whole essay. We've got whole different sections, and we want to be able to say, okay, this content is grouped logically. How can we do that? Well, another really good tag for that is a section. So we can say, hey, this is one logical group of information, and then inside of here, we can add as much content as we'd like. What else? And we can have as many sections inside of content as we want. So if we wanted to have multiple sections, we could go ahead and we can just say a section like that. And we can add more and more depending on what our content needs. So again, this is sort of a back and forth. You start with the content, you say, how could we logically group this? And then you could start providing these sort of wrappers for that information. Same way we do in Figma, right? We start designing, we add some text, we add a button. Next thing you know, you're starting to group things and frame things and auto layout things as you start going. We do the same thing with HTML. Now these are all really semantic, right? Remember, it's a spectrum. We have headers, we've got main, we've got footer. These like mean real important things. What if we want something that's like a group in Figma? That's like just generic. It's like, we don't really have like a real semantic label for this, but we want to keep these things connected anyway. How can we do that? Well, there's a very special element, and it's called a div. So why don't we go ahead, we'll write it out. So it's angle bracket, div, and then we're going to close it. So div is like the catch-all connector. It is the group in Figma. It's where we can, it doesn't really have a semantic meaning for it. It just means that everything inside of this should be connected and related to one another. So all the information that we want to put inside of here is just related and connected to one another. When a browser reads this, it's just saying, I don't really know what this means. It's not like a section. It's not the main content of the page. It's not the footer. But I do know that everything inside of it should be related. And when we get into CSS and styling a little bit more, it becomes much more valuable for us. But right now, it's just kind of this broad catch-all for all of the information we have on the page. And so this is nesting, this idea of putting elements inside of other elements.